Hey, everybody, and welcome to the For Female Founders podcast series, where we are helping women in business learn to thrive, not just survive. I am your host, Sarah Bundy, and today my guest is Karina Muller. Karina is the founder and CEO of Maripossa Wellness and brings over 25 years of expertise in health, wellness, stress management, and leadership development. With an MBA from Cornell and certifications in corporate wellness, she delivers workshops and programs for startups, hospitals, and corporate teams nationwide. Today, we're going to be talking about burnout and stress management for female founders, owners, and operators, because I tell you, it is a thing. Karina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here.
I appreciate getting to meet you. The first time you and I met, my goodness, did you and I ever hit it off? It was just, we met and actually connected on LinkedIn, and I think became very fast friends. Tell us a little bit more about your background. How did you start Maripossa Wellness, and what kind of brought you into this stress management, wellness, anti-burnout world that you live in?
I love this question because it's a very simple answer. I was that burnout person. I was burnt out. There you go.
Yeah.
Can we end the podcast? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I started my career in fashion, apparel, and footwear, and at one point found myself living literally in multiple continents at the same time. I did product development in Asia, had clients in South America, the US, and some stuff in Europe. And I basically lived on planes. And I have to say, in your 20s and part of your 30s, to have someone pay for you to fly around the world is kind of really cool on that aspect. But on the other aspect, when you work in Asia and you work in the factories, you really are working 6 days a week, and you never sleep, because when you rest, everyone in the US is awake, and like when you go to sleep, when you wake up, everyone in the US is asleep. And so it's like 4 or 5 hours of a break that you have in between there. And I like to say that what saved me, and jokingly and not jokingly, from burning out or from having a serious drug problem, alcohol problem, obesity problem, was having a practice and having a toolbox and having tools to deal with everyday life challenges. And so it helped that I come from a very athletic family, and I've been an athlete my whole life, and I started practicing yoga and meditation in high school and all that stuff very early in my life. And I'm very grateful for that. And nutrition was always very important because I was an athlete. And I think I took those elements into my work career that saved me. And so I then went to even more stressful, from footwear and apparel to creative director for a sports network in 3 different languages and 35% live programming. And then eventually really did burn out, Sarah, and had to take a 6-week sabbatical when it was sold to Fox Sports, which is Fox in Espanol. And literally had to sit down and take a massive break. And then I thought, oh, what can I do that's like light and easy? But I don't know how to do light and easy. So but I did segue more into the wellness world. But then I was the turnaround specialist of facilities and wellness centers and operations. And again, found myself working in multiple continents and multiple languages. And then I sort of woke up in my 40s exhausted and burnt out. And I said, what can I do to help others not reach this point? And how do I do that? And so then I took 4 years to really study alternative therapies and physical therapy and integrative therapies, and worked in hospitals and worked in Haiti and did all this stuff to really understand beyond my own personal experience on burnout and exhaustion and what saved me, but what really can go into a toolbox and meet people where they're at and have an awareness of who's in front of me. And so after all of that, I created Maripossa Wellness to support me, you, business people, and also really to support caregivers in hospitals too. I spent a lot of years working with what I wanted to do was more the patient side. And after about 3.5 years of working in hospitals on the patient side, I realized I need to develop programming for the people that take care of the patients, because there's a huge amount. I don't know so much in Canada, but I would imagine it's the same. But in the US, there's one of the highest burnout rates in the world, or in the US, is nurses.
I believe it.
And we have a shortage in the US. So I really began to focus Maripossa Wellness on supporting the caregivers on how to better take care of themselves in order to better take care of others.
I love that you're doing that. It's unfortunate that oftentimes we have to, fall flat on our faces and experience the bad stuff before we actually build those skills and build the toolboxes to be able to fix ourselves, help ourselves. And then I suppose in a way it's good that it happens to us, because when you got the heart for it, you can go and help others as well.
Yeah, I think that's key. I mean, I think there's different elements I talk about, like, unfortunately, this is sort of a first world problem, but I broke my leg skiing, and
Still a problem.
was a problem, but I didn't stop working, Sarah. So I literally traveled to Asia with a cast and crutches and the wheelchair and the whole thing. And my bone didn't heal properly, and I ended up in surgery. And the reason I tell this story is because the orthopedic trauma surgeon turned to my parents and said, if I'm going to operate on her, you need to put her on lockdown. Like, she can't get on a plane and be working 24/7 trying to heal this. And so they moved me back into their house. And for 8 weeks, they had me like on lockdown, where I wasn't allowed to leave, because I was so like intense. Like, I got to work. No, I got to keep working. And, so you're right. Like, I think we go through these traumas that lead us to better understanding. And so the whole mission statement behind Maripossa Wellness is for people not to reach that point. I don't want them to reach that point.
And I appreciate your story. There's a lot that I kind of want to break down from just the constant travel, which I have personally had to do and has also made me burn out. The around the clock hours, time zone differences leads to burnout also happened to me. I didn't break a leg skiing, but I did have 2 babies back to back and had no maternity leaves. I had 5 days off after my daughter was born and was hitting the road and traveling again. Also leads to burnout. And I think the thing is that we've got jobs to do. We've got purposes we want to fulfill. A lot of us have families that we need to care for, whether it's elderly parents or younger children, or, an extended, our chosen family, our family. And life happens. Somebody breaks a leg, somebody, ends up in the hospital over this, somebody's sick and can't go to work. And it's just a constant bombardment of things for us to be able to survive and just live our lives. And burnout is so common, especially for women. And it's a tough place to be. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because I know a lot of the women who are listening to this right now have either experienced it, maybe are on the verge of burnout, or are young and haven't gotten there yet. But if they don't be careful, at some point, they might risk hitting that burnout stage. And that's not a fun place to be.
No.
With Awin's marketing technology platform, you can easily discover the best partners who connect you with huge audiences of new customers. Understand how your partnerships are performing with intuitive reporting, and only pay for the results you need. Start today and grow your own way with Awin. So please give us a little bit of tips and advice. I mean, there's a stress piece to this. There's a sleep piece to this. There's an actual physiological resting piece to this. There's mindset. Like, how would you break this down for us?
Wow, there's a lot to break down.
Right.
Yes. So I think one of the big words that I use is permission. I think as women, we don't give ourselves permission to break down or stop or let go. We look at it as selfish, or we're not driving hard enough, or not moving fast enough, right? And I think a core word there is permission. Like, it's okay to take a moment for yourselves, right? It's okay to say, you know what, mom needs to take a bath right now, and I'm going to lock the door. Like one of my favorite examples is a client would say to me, like I was working one-on-one with her, and every so often she would lock herself in the bathroom. And I was like, what? Why are we in a bathroom? And she's like, because it's the only place my kids can't find me. And I can take.
They can find you. They still find you in the bathroom, but they can't get in.
But they can't get in, right? And so I think that that's a big word for women, is that idea of permission and that idea of battling selfishness versus self-care.
Yes.
And I think we need to start with that step of like, okay, I have been told I need to be superwoman, right? No, you don't. You don't. Like, it doesn't mean that you're failing at anything if you don't do everything perfect. But again, I think it's like we grow up with these images and this idea of superwoman and Wonder Woman, and like women can do it all, and women can be moms and have careers and have partners and on. And then, we wake up and we go, well, now I'm exhausted, burnt out. My health is not there. Like my weight isn't where it's supposed to be, all those other things. Right. And so it's finding that balance for within yourself. So that's one of the big missions about Maripossa Wellness, is to create a toolbox for yourself that's simple, easy, and accessible, Sarah. So I want you, women in general, number one, to give yourself permission to take care of yourself, but also find things that resonate with you that are small and easy and are not an additional burden, are not an additional responsibility, are not like, oh my God, I've got to do this. Like, but what are those little things? Like, is it standing on your feet and taking 10 breaths? Is it taking a moment to listen to your favorite piece of music? Is it taking a moment to go outside and just be in nature? And I don't mean to sound too woo-woo, but like Sarah's got a beautiful garden behind her. Like, is it to take a moment and hug a tree? Literally go hug a tree.
I have done that, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't cost you any money. Like, you can drag your kid along if that happens too. Do you know what I mean? But it's about like, maybe it's smelling your favorite essential oil or getting a candle. It's about those little things, right? And eventually those little things lead to big things. But I like to say all of us as human beings, but I think especially women, we set these incredibly lofty goals for ourselves. Like, oh, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. I'm going to go to the gym. Then I'm going to get my kid to school. I'm going to make them like a homemade lunch. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to sign 10 contracts. I'm going to do all these deals. I'm going to make $1 million in 10 minutes. And then I'm going to go pick up my kid from school, and I'm going to take him to on and like I'm already exhausted listing all that. And I know that you're laughing, Sarah, because that's probably you.
Yes, actually, I was like, this sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah. But like, what if it is, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m., but maybe I'm just going to do a couple of stretches in my room and take a few breaths and maybe drink my coffee in peace and then go get my kid. And maybe today I don't go to the gym, but at least I take 10 minutes for me to breathe and drink coffee in peace in silence and then go through my day, right?
There were a couple of things that you said there that I think I want to call out in a different way. So one is giving yourself permission to rest and to not take on the world, I think is huge. That's a wonderful reminder. And yes, step one. What's interesting about that is you didn't say, go add on to your schedule that you need to go to the gym. Don't add on to your schedule that you need to take a bath. You said, breathe outside, feel the sun, go hug a tree. You said, smell your essential oil. These things are simple things that are very easy. You don't have to add anything. You actually take stuff off. You're taking stuff off your plate and the pressure off your plate. And you're adding in the addition of rest. And these little pieces to your second point is what resonates with you. What can you build in your own toolkit that resonates with you, that is restful and recharging for you? And it doesn't have to be complicated.
No, and it doesn't need to cost you a lot of money. It really doesn't. And it doesn't need to be super elaborate, because what happens is when you start to incorporate these things as a habit in your life, then you do want to go to the gym. then you do want to go to yoga or Pilates or play tennis or do whatever it is, right? Because now you go, oh, well, maybe I do have the time. Maybe I do have the space. Maybe I can give myself permission for that space. But if you start from the point of, I have to, and if I don't, I fail, then you're going to fail.
I think one of the other really important things that you're talking about here too is allowing capacity. And so as founders, as owners, as operators, as entrepreneurs, if we're not giving ourselves the mental space to do a better job as leaders or founders or running a company, how can we make the right decisions if we're constantly exasperated? So can you talk a little bit about signs? What do we look out for? How do we know when we're getting to the point where we're taking on too much, where we are at that breaking point, or before we even get to that breaking point? What do you notice and what do you tell people to do? A great big thank you to our sponsors, PartnerStack. PartnerStack's ecosystem connects you to the world's largest B2B network for you to earn, connect, and grow.
I love that question too. One of the things that I don't know, I'm going to ask you if this has ever happened to you. Do you ever feel like you're short of breath or you can't breathe?
Yes.
And you haven't moved, you haven't run a marathon, you haven't done anything other than be in front of your computer?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this has felt that at some point.
Right. That's a sign.
Fair.
It's a sign. It's a sign that you're holding your breath, you're holding tension, you're holding stress, right? Because you're like that. And then when you finally take that breath, you're like, oh, now I'm exhausted, right? So that's a really big sign. Another sign is physical, literal physical. Like, does your neck hurt? Do your shoulders hurt? Does your lower back hurt? Are you dealing with migraines? Not just headaches, but migraines. Do you feel like you're drinking too much coffee in the afternoon?
Or
Right. As a Latin, I'm never going to tell you not to drink coffee because it's a staple in my life. But maybe how much of it are you consuming? Are you reaching for something sugary, right? Are you reaching for something that you believe is going to give you that lift to keep going? So I also like to say, Sarah, that the body whispers, it speaks, it screams, and then God forbid. So I think we hear all these things. I think it's just, I like to teach people to bring awareness to it. Just like I brought awareness to asking you, do you ever feel like you're short of breath? You don't stop to think about that.
I got to share a funny story. You're right.
Please.
And I will show you how I know you're right, because this past weekend, I actually came from a wellness retreat in Vancouver. It was all CEOs, founders, all females, and there were about 20 of us. And we learned these breathing exercises. And at first I actually was struggling. I actually couldn't figure out how to breathe properly. The breathing facilitator was like, breathe with your stomach and then through your diaphragm and then go into your chest. Your chest has a capacity. You can't inhale anymore if you're only breathing with your chest. And I actually couldn't figure out how to breathe with my stomach because I'd spent so long only breathing with my chest. And at some point when I finally figured it out, rando tears kept like leaking out of my face. I was crying and I didn't even know why I was crying. I think it was just because for the first time in what felt like years, I could actually breathe for the very first time. So I didn't realize how frequently I was holding my breath until we actually did that breathing exercise. And boy, did it ever release a lot of stuff. But yeah, the importance of learning how to breathe properly and being mindful of that has made, even in this weekend, just made a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I'm sure you've heard the expression that your brain is really in your gut.
Yes.
The other yogic belief or Buddhist belief is that we carry emotion and tension and feelings in our hips. And allowing your hips to release will allow for release of emotional tension. Also, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but like if you take a yoga class and you do like what they call a heart opener, whether it's like a back bend or something stretching back, if you notice, if someone's going a hard time, they'll cry. They will like have tears in class or they'll cry because they're literally cracking this open, which is a little bit of what happened to you.
Right.
And again, it's that physical being of, okay, now what am I letting out and what am I letting in?
If you were to prioritize, okay, I'm going to give you a scenario. Okay, ready?
Okay.
I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios.
Please.
Scenario one, you've got a working mom. She's in her mid-30s. Okay, she's got 2 kids. They're, call it 6 and 4. Okay, so we got a 6 and a 4-year-old. She runs a company. She's married. She's got her parents. She wants to be a great friend. She's got her siblings. She loves her activities and her sports, but hasn't been able to go in a really long time because life. She can't hit the gym, even though she used to be super athletic. She just doesn't have time. And she feels like she's been holding her breath because there is no downtime. There's no moment to stop. Mm-hmm. What are 3 things you could give that person in order of priority of this one will make the biggest difference for you right now, followed by this one, that she could actually implement today?
The biggest one I would say is movement at her desk. Move.
Okay, let's talk about how. Standing desk, move, get out of the house. Like, what do you suggest?
No. I think if someone is well, yes, you can. Like, the other thing is, a 4 and a 6-year-old. Like, let's say she's like, walk them to school or take them to school, but maybe little things. And these may sound silly, Sarah, but like, I had a very famous diabetes doctor told me this, that he was almost the Surgeon General of the US. He said that he tells all his patients to park their car as far away as possible in the mall parking lot or a shopping parking lot, because that's how he gets them to start walking.
Makes sense. It's a good one.
It's a really good one. So let's say you're going to a supermarket, park far away and be conscious of your walk into the supermarket. Mm-hmm. Notice how you're walking. Notice if you're walking like this. Notice if you're walking with your chest up. Like, notice your walk and breathe through the walk. And it may sound silly and it may be 5 minutes, but you've got to go to the supermarket anyway.
Good way.
So why not take advantage of that moment for yourself? And maybe don't go to the supermarket with the kids hanging off of you. Maybe just go by yourself.
Fair.
And when you're sitting at your desk, maybe take a moment to just kind of move your head up and down or side to side. Or sometimes my favorite one is to literally just fold over your chair and go inwards and fold over yourself. And that will release your hips, your lower back, your shoulders, your neck. And just take 10 breaths, Sarah, and kind of crawl inwards and be like, I need to take everybody out.
You know, right? Lying in the fetal position actually sounds nice to me.
No, yes, lying in a fetal position is a really well-known yoga therapy pose. The other thing is, a lot of moms still have their pregnancy pillow.
Yeah.
Yeah, lie in a fetal position and hug the hell out of the pillow. So like that mom, let's say 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes and just lie with the pillow, or take 2 minutes and fold over your chair and just breathe, or take a minute and just ground on your feet, close your eyes and just take a bunch of breaths, or I like to say keep a candle or essential oil nearby too, and just take some breaths with that, and that'll change your mindset too. So again, there's little things like take your kids for a walk. Go for a walk with the kids too. Or, incorporate, you can do fun stuff with your kids. Like all through COVID, I also taught virtually all these friends of mine and their kids yoga online. And it was really fun. It was like a really silly 20 minutes. And we called out all these funny animal names, right? Like monkey pose and cow ear pose and warrior pose, which I'm sure you've heard all this. Yes. But now you're a super busy mom and you've got a 4 and a 6-year-old, but can you do little fun things with them that's also going to make you feel better?
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Okay. Scenario number 2. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You are talking to a 45-year-old now. She's got a 14 and a 16-year-old, teenagers. She's been working the last 20 to 25 years and hasn't really had any breaks, and has built and sold 2 companies and is starting another one, or has just exited corporate life, had climbed up the corporate ladder for 20 something years, got super burnt out. Now she is burnt out. Okay. And
Yes.
she's got teens and she doesn't even know how to like process what happened over the last 20 years and still has to keep going. What does that person do?
Hire a personal trainer.
Hire a personal trainer. Okay. Okay. So a lot of physical fitness, movement types of things. Like that.
I guess for me, and I say that jokingly and not, like, your kids are already teenagers, right? And like, there are certain things they can do by themselves.
Yes.
That is different than a 4 and a 6-year-old, right? And we also have to trust, again, it goes back to women feeling like they're Wonder Woman and Superwoman and we've got to do it all, right? One of my biggest pet peeves is when fathers say, I'm babysitting my kids. What does that mean?
As in, I am parenting my children.
Children, yes. Right, you're not babysitting your child. It's your child. But women let them get away with it, right? Because we have to be all in, so maybe allow your teen to do some things too, so that you create some space to do things for yourself, and that's okay. I've also seen, again, like I as a teenager, like I've seen my sister-in-law used to do this with her mom. Like they would go to spinning classes together, or they would go to yoga together. Or I've been in Pilates classes that like there's a 16-year-old and there's a mom in the class together. And so that also think is a really lovely bonding. I mean, obviously it depends, or take a tennis class with your kid. Like it depends on male, female, or whatever interests your child may have. But that's also a way to get you to do it. Spend some time with your kids. That's not around like teenage things like homework and grades and chores, but maybe creating some fun too. I also think for me, growing up, and I see it with my brothers and their kids and my nieces and nephews, like the most fun we have together is when we're doing some kind of sports activity together.
For sure.
And those were the best vacations, family vacations, because you don't really fight as much when you're like active and doing stuff and letting it out physically, right?
Yes. For sure. And if you're not a sports family, it could be board games, or it could be card games, or it could be writing, or it could be going to festivals, or whatever it is.
Whatever it is, but find those things, right? And you're right. Thank you for pointing out, if you're not, I am a big believer, and I will stand by this. Some kind of physical movement is great for any age, any person, anytime. That doesn't mean you have to go run a marathon. That doesn't mean you have to play a tennis match. That doesn't mean you have to ski, do Pilates, any of that. But you can move your body and breathe and go for a walk or do some kind of physical movement, because it's going to help that mind-body connection and help you release. But you could also, like you said, you could journal. My brother and nephew taught me the other day about chess.com. It's like huge now. I mean, you could take chess lessons and, it's like they're all about it. So yes, I think that there's other things that you could do for your mind that will give you those breaks at times.
I'm with you. And you know what? I don't know if you've heard of the blue zones or not. Anybody who's listening, take a look and do some Googling around blue zones. These are the communities around the world that have the largest concentration of centenarians, meaning people who live to be over 100 years old. And a lot of these communities don't have dementia, they don't have diabetes, they don't have mental health issues, their depression doesn't exist. And they all have the exact same 9 things in common. And one of them is to move consistently, move naturally. And that literally could be parking further away, carrying your groceries a little further, or instead of sitting and having a coffee with your friend, you have a coffee and go for a walk with a friend. So it's just the constant movement keeps you alive and healthy and your brain going and your stress levels down. So there is science to back what you were saying.
Yeah. And like
a long time doing it.
Yeah. And like, I was fascinated by this. My mom was an incredibly successful attorney and she was always working. But later in life, somehow she discovered cooking. I don't know how, Sarah, but like in her 60s.
Nice.
And she never cooked. She made great scrambled eggs, but growing up, but she wasn't. But then all of a sudden she said to me, well, now it helps me calm down when I come from the law firm. And she's like, I kind of find some peace in it. you know, and I thought that was great at like in your 60s to find, I kind of really like to cook. I find some kind of meditation and peace in it. Right. And so again, that's a movement, right? You're standing, you could be mixing, you could, you know.
Right. And back to what resonates with you. Number one was give yourself permission to rest, give yourself permission to not have to work, to be able to say, no, I can't do that right now because I need to take care of myself. That is absolutely not only okay, that is absolutely encouraged. And then number two is do what resonates with you. And if that is cooking and learning how to cook in your 60s, perfect. If that is joining a Dungeons and Dragons club so that you can learn a new game and have some social time with somebody and it's totally random and new, go for it. But we need to simplify and create that space. So think about, to our listeners, think about what would work for you, even if it's just going back to those simple, take some deep breaths, lean over your chair, inhale your essential oils. These are good starting points. We're running out of time and we only have time for one more question, unfortunately, but let's go here. For the people who lead teams, what is some advice you would give to make sure that as a leader, they're not burning out their team?
Listen to your team. And I don't mean surveys, and those are great. They're great. Don't get me wrong. But I think sometimes we spend too much time throwing out these employee surveys to like understand what employees want and don't want. And then that doesn't meet the expectation either, because then the employees fill out all these surveys and then they come back and they're like, now what? Right. But I think that there is really listen to your team members. They probably have some really interesting things to say, but really listen, allow them to be heard. Don't just act like you're listening. I did a training of 400 leaders a few years back, and we put them through this active listening exercise. And every single one of them, Sarah, said, I don't listen. I don't hear a word that was just said to me.
Wow.
Because what happens is people talk at you, right? Most employees come, they talk to the founder. The founder's got like financial exhaustion. How am I paying payroll? How am I going to close the next deal? I mean, you know all that. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you have time for is for an employee to be like, drive. So it's like, but if they're concise about it in like 2 to 3 minutes, okay, that attention span you could probably have.
Right.
But if it, so it's like, if you really want to work with your teams and you want to get their feedback, then really listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I can attest to that. I had the largest my team was at one point was 40. And it doesn't work if you're not listening to them. And the last thing you want to do is burn out your talent.
Exactly.
The last thing you want to do is create a culture where you're squeezing every last ounce of energy out of people. And then you have high turnover and disgruntled employees who do less than par work because you're crunching them too much, because you're pushing them too hard. Yeah. So take a breath, step back. We got to make sure we're taking care of our people too. And when we are, it is actually quite easy to listen to them. We just have to make sure we have that mindset and priority.
There's 2 things I'm going to add quickly because I know we're running out of time.
Please.
One of the most successful mentality for teams that I've ever seen and experienced is having that captain of the team attitude, right? Like you are the captain as the founder or business owner or leader, but you still got a team and you got to work together and you got to collaborate and you have to listen. So that attitude of, I'm a captain of this team. I'm responsible for this team. Mm-hmm. I'm going to lead this team as a captain, but a captain listens and understands the collaboration and that there's different roles and they need to come together.
And that they have their team's best interest at heart.
Yes. And so you have to make your team feel like, hey, our captain's got our back.
Exactly. Yeah. Good place to end. That is a perfect...
Wait, one more piece of advice quickly. Last one. Promise. I love to say this. This is what I'm going to leave everybody with. The majority of, no matter if you're a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old, a 20-year-old, so many of us have this very fancy watch on our wrists that's worth $1,000 or whatever it's worth. And it buzzes and we ignore it. So the challenge I'm going to leave everyone on this podcast is, please, if it's buzzing, maybe move and get up. Maybe drink some water. Maybe walk to the bathroom. Don't ignore the buzzing of the money on your wrist because you have it for a reason and it's informing you. And so my challenge is maybe 3 times a week, doesn't have to be every day. Listen to it and see how you feel.
There you go. Your watch is watching you. I like it. So thank you so much, Karina, for being here with us today. We appreciate you and your tips and your tricks on how not to burn out and what to do if you do burn out. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you from here?
For Karina, MaripossaWellness.com is the best way, or the website has an info and they can reach out, or LinkedIn, any of those usual spots.
Karina Muller from Maripossa Wellness. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys on the next show. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks for listening to the 4 Female Founders podcast series. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe, like, or comment below so we can continue to support women in business by helping them thrive, not just survive. We'll see you on the next show.